Roll it through, give it to a carrier on the horse.
Beasties and things that go bump in the night. Good Lord, deliver us. Vampires, werewolves, things that do go bump in the night. Yes, can such things be? Well, as great philosophers have often referred to this time immemorial question, they can only come up with one answer. Boo. Welcome and good evening. Well, you came all the way down here to get scared, didn't you? Oh, yes. Well, I'm sure she dragged you kicking and screaming, didn't she? He's not afeard of the unknown. He's just feared of the cultural aspects of this evening. Huh? Thought she was going to take you over to the opera or ballet. Oh, the opera. Sends shivers up my back. La boheme, boring. But actually, a little lecture on parapsychology, that shouldn't be too frightening when you think of the other alternatives. Oh, parapsychology, that's a scientific or pseudoscientific term for the study of the supernatural, or shall we say the unknown, beyond the veil, or the hocus and the pocus, the ghost, or the spook. You know, they've been with us since ancient times, in our prehistory as well. Oh, you see them in our literature, even today. Oh, well, culturally speaking, to get you nervous. Culturally speaking, you can think in our great pieces of literature, you've got Hamlet's ghost from Hamlet. See, I do read. And of course, Banquo's ghost. I shouldn't even mention that in the theater because there's superstition about saying Macbeth. You know, yes, you know that too. Oh, and poor Catherine, wandering the moors, going Heathcliff, 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 from Wuthering Heights, not the comic strip. You can sit with him. Oh, and well, you even get them in television today. I'm sure many of you are familiar with one of those shows where these two mental giants sit inside of a abandoned warehouse or what was it, an asylum or a lavatory, and they pad close to a whole hour, you know. Harvey, I think there's a creak in the wall. Let's wait for about 10 minutes and listen again. Talk about padding for television. Let's utilize they've always got equipment, our ether analyzer. Spook. And of course there's always this washed out blonde from the 60s who has seen better days, who can actually tell you what your aura color will be. You have a burnt umber with a little bit of sunset on your horizon. She has no idea what she's talking about, but she has the other world categorized and listed all the way down the line. Oh yes, television is a great wealth of information in those areas. But when you figure, when you're talking about these ghosts, a lot of the stories are historically accurate. Since we're in a museum, let's talk a little bit about history. The only recorded, I think the most ancient recorded documentation of a ghost dates back to ancient Greece, when an innkeeper actually murdered one of his guests, who was very wealthy, and walled him up. But later on was exposed because the authorities had been hearing witnesses who had been attending at the inn strange moans and rattling. Murder of the Motley Six. He was later exposed and convicted, all because of a haunting. Oh, history has its share. But 98% of all these cases can be disproven. Oh, the beams in the wood, a creak of the wood, the temperature gauge. Oh, and there's always, what do they call them? Oh, orbs, which are really reflected dust particles or moth in the floodlight of the camera. But they really think they're ghosts. And of course, there's always a perennial answer to any supernatural situation: swamp gas. That seems to be the panacea. Now, when we think about the parapsychology, or the study of the supernatural, especially around this time of year, we like to date ourselves back, but think again, 98% can all be disproven. But there are some cases that can be at least puzzled over. These are areas of not really psychic laws or natural laws, but something in between what we don't call the supernatural, but the preternatural. Yes, the preternatural. This is cases where we're not too sure of the psychic content or the physics of it, but it's just around the corner in its discovery. For an example, the mother who's washing the dishes, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she drops what she's doing, she runs up in the front of the yard, picks up her little baby before he gets hit by a car. Psychic equation, we don't know. Could be psychic genetics for all we know. Also, areas that actually have been documented, the shadows of the children running from the blast of the bomb in Hiroshima, their shadows captured in time, 1945. Now, if we took some of our knowledge, let's just say, of what we know today, we're teleported 200 to 300 years ago and started to prattle on about X-rays, probably take you away and put you in Bedlam. But yet today we know X-rays exist. We can't see them, but they're there. Same thing with the preternatural. Now, the belief in spirits, or the undead, or the ghosts, or whatever we want to discuss. And of course, I did say dates back even to prehistoric times. There was a good reason why the prehistoric man buried his relatives under blocks of stone and rock. It was not to keep the vermin out. It was to keep Aunt Edna in. We, of course, now look at other cases and start to delve into a little bit of what parapsychology is all about, scientifically discovering the different types of cases. And I said a majority of them can all be disproven. But there are a number of them in different categories. And I love when man always tries to race to put categories right away on anything he's trying to discover. It sort of gives him a false sense of security. especially in this area, away from the unknown. They come in threes, supposedly, these supposedly ghost phenomena. The first one is a combination of the preternatural and the natural, for that matter. There's one case, several cases, in fact, that were documented of maybe a ghostly figure walking down a corridor and then was observed to walk right through a wall. Done sporadically? No, on a timely basis, over years, decades, even centuries. They later on look at the blueprints of the mansion or castle, find out that there was a doorway where that ghost had exited over 150, 200 years ago. A great case of this mixture of the preternatural and the natural is this one. Richard Sennett, an archaeologist and anthropologist, actually got together with his troops. He went out to Ventura County to investigate Indian digs. And he was set up at a mission by an order of brothers. And he remembered one night, early in the evening, he had an attack of the hungries and decided to walk out to the kitchen compound, which was across the courtyard. He started to do this, and across the courtyard he saw a solitary monk holding a candle. He gestured out to the monk and tried to apologize for disrupting what appeared to be the monk's vigil. The monk continued walking and paid no heed. Well, Richard went into the kitchen, got himself a cheese sandwich, went back to his little room, and was happy for the rest of the evening. The next morning, just to make small talk, he mentioned again to the brothers apologizing for interrupting their vigil from last night. And one of the brothers said, "Oh, you saw Brother Andrew. Brother Andrew always likes to tend his garden, even at night. He's very particular about that garden. He always has been. Of course, he's been tending the garden since 1798. That's food for thought, along with the cheese sandwich. Another case in point is, again, another idea of a mixture of what could be scientifically explained and who knows what the imagination could think of. We can go back to those wonderful years of 1940, the war years. A young lady was back east. The standard story, father, very strict Presbyterian minister. She sneaks out on the weekend, goes to the USO canteen to offer her services. Oh, come on, dancing. You can sit with him too. Anyway, she was dancing harmlessly as the hostess were in the 1940s at the USO canteens. But as luck would have it, she met a young naval officer, and they both fell in love. And they started to see each other secretly, and they wound up getting wed secretly. He so finally got his papers and called to action. And of course, they had a wonderful tender scene where he said goodbye and farewell, but that he would return to her again, and there he held her in his arms in his navy whites and said farewell. Months go by, and then in the middle of the night, out of nowhere, she wakes up with a start, and there he is at the foot of the step, at the foot of the bed. There he is, dressed in his naval whites, radiant. He gestures to her. She gestures to him, half asleep. He disappears. She goes back into a troubled sleep. And you know, several days later, the naval escort knocks on the door with a horrible telegram that many families faced during that time, informing her that her beloved had died in action on that very night. Now here's the odd part. If he died in action, he would be in his battle fatigues. He would not be in his navy whites. So why would he appear to her thusly? Except that's when she remembered him the most, in front of her in his navy whites, proclaiming his eternal love for her. Well, I guess you can go back home after all. You know, I didn't even ask you this interesting question. How many here believe in ghosts? Do I hear a yay?
Yay.
How many do not believe in the aspect of ghosts? Do I hear a nay?
Nay.
Well, you're like John Steinbeck, who said, I do not believe in ghosts, but I've seen quite a few. Oh, now, the third one is really interesting if we're doing this little lecture. The third one, a young lady finally finds a decent apartment in a loft-style apartment building, one of those odd jobs on the hill, this was in New York, but like in San Francisco, one of those odd jobs, the building, not the girl. But she moved in, and on the night her friends are there helping her move in, they have a little housewarming party. Well, she didn't want to seem rude, but she was tired of the fatiguing era of the day, so she goes down into a little loft area below, and she had a little settee there, and she stretched out on it, and she just wanted to relax, and she felt a little bit of a chill. So she turned on a small little heater. Well, what happened was fairly interesting. As she turned on the heater, a portly man stepped through the archway, and he had a beer-belly chest, balding, and a splain of hair across his forehead, and he just simply said to her, "Don't touch that!" and then promptly disappeared. A day later, she talked to her landlady, and she asked a little bit about the tenant who lived there before her, and he fit the description to the T. And she found out later on that they found out a year before he had committed suicide. But yet, they later on discovered that the heater had a faulty knob. So when he pointed to the faulty knob, he was in fact saving her by saying, "Don't touch that!" Oh, you startled me. I thought you were a ghost.
And what makes you think that I'm not?
Listen to them, the children of the night, what music they make. The spider spinning his web for the unwary fly. The blood is the light, Mr. Redfield.
Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
Don't touch that!
Yesterday, upon the stair,
I met a man who wasn't there.
he wasn't there again today.
Oh, how I wish he'd go away.
The hitchhiker.
Oh, not that old chestnut. I mean, really, that old legend about the driver in east of Chicago. He goes over, that's the Resurrection Mary. Yes, Resurrection Mary. He goes to Resurrection Cemetery. As I remember, he's driving close to Resurrection Cemetery. He sees a young lady, and he decides to pick her up. She looks rather distressed. She comes in, sits into the car, and she said she just is en route to a party, but she wants to go home, and gives the directions, and he drives her home. She shivers, and he puts his sweater around her neck, and then he drives her to this house, and she gets up and leaves. He drives off, and then he remembers he lent his sweater to her and drove back, and he knocks on the door, and of course, a man answers the door, and when the explanation is given, the man looks ashen looking because he relates that his daughter had died on that very night, years before. She had died en route to a party and died in a car crash. And ever since then, she's been trying to come home. The driver is distraught by this, but jumps into his car, but feels compelled to drive to Resurrection Cemetery. And there, on the grave tombstone, is the name Mary, and his sweater is draped over it. Now this results for him into complete horror and also inspires a really dreadful song from the 60s. The Hitchhiker, yes?
No. What I had in mind was an actual story that occurred that's recorded on a police blotter in Seekonk, Massachusetts, where Fred Durpus was driving down a dark section of Route 44 in 1974 in his pickup truck. He said, "I was driving along the highway and I saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. It's pretty late, around 10 o'clock. The guy had dark, thick red hair and a red plaid shirt, blue jeans. I figured he must have broken down. So I pulled over, got to offer him a ride, and he hurried towards a car, climbed in, and as we started driving down the road, I asked him, 'So where are you going?' He just looked at me and smiled. He wouldn't say anything. So I asked him again, 'Where are you going?' He just kept looking at me, smiling. I started feeling kind of uneasy, so I just pulled over and told him to get out. He got out all right, but not the way I thought. He just disappeared. He just started getting hazy until I could see through him, and then he just vanished. It took me a long time to accept what I saw that night. I will never drive down that section of Route 44 again.
Hello? Hello, below there? I called out to the signalman last night. Hello? Hello, below there? He did not seem to even acknowledge me. Suddenly there was a vibration, a pulsation on the ground, and I could hear the vapors, and then feel the vapors coming up from below, and then the smoke and the steam and the train passed by. The signalman finally turned around and gestured to me. He seemed to respond finally to my request to show me how to get down to his area through the rock-hewn steps below. He pointed with his lantern and his furled signal flag. I promptly saw him ground level. Well, you could not pick a most desolate, stationary, and incredible depressing spot in your life. It was an odd station, to be certain, jagged walls of stone on either side, a strip of sky, just barely between, and a gaping hole of a tunnel with a dim red light. I told him I would assume that he had very little visitors. He looked at me and seemed to acknowledge that who I was, a person who had been spent up with his life and not exactly living it to its fullest, but who was finally enjoying life and enjoying the railway. I wanted to know more. Well, I told him, I said, "You seem to have a dread of me." He said, "By all means, you see, sir, I have my doubts that I have seen you by that." And he pointed to the tunnel. And I told him, most assuredly, I'd never been there before. He seemed rather relieved by this, and discussed a little bit about his life. He invited me into his little box of an office, and I watched him perform his perfunctory duties. This was concerning pulling iron handle and trimming the signal every now and then procuring, by listening to electric bell, the telegraph, receiving and sending and so forth. He described to me that his predilection was for the natural sciences, and through one misspent opportunity or another, resounded himself in this situation with the railway. He did not seem to complain and enjoyed his work well. Well, I told him if there was anyone I'd met along my way of life that was content in his job, he was the man. And I was about to leave when he said, "Sir, I often have felt that way, but not anymore, sir. For you see, I'm in trouble. And if you take time, sir, if you take time to visit again, I will share that with you." Well, I was quite taken aback, but I said, of course, that was my original plan, was to hear more about your performance on your job and so forth. And he then said something peculiar. He said, I get on at 10, and pray, when you leave, do not call out, and when you appear again tomorrow night, do not call out, for did you not call out, hello, below there? Or, yes, or I said something like that. No, he said, you said those very words, I heard you, hello, below there. Was there any supernatural reason for you to say that? No. He raised his lantern, and I went up the stairs and back to my inn with no more adventure. I came the next evening, punctually. He then said something to me, stirred me a bit. Said, I thought I knew you from before, of someone that I mistook. I said, but who is this? He goes, I do not know. Because this person that I've seen had his hand over his face like this and was gesticulating with his arm in such fashion. Well, I could not wonder what he was talking about, but then he proceeded to say, you see, a while ago, I was working in my duties, and I heard a voice yell out, hello, below there! And I went out, and I saw this figure, his hand and arm across his face, and gesturing, keep away, keep away. I ventured to say, what is the danger? He said no more. I walked up to him, and he pushed himself within the tunnel darkness, and I could see him or touch him no longer. I went back to my office, and immediately on the telegraph said, danger, danger. They replied, all is well. But in 6 to 7 hours came that memorable incident which has blackened this line. It took 10 hours for them to remove the battered, dead and wounded from that line, and the bodies were placed. But I saw now that spectre. This is extraordinary. But it is not done yet, sir. You see, 6 to 7 months later, I was relieved that there was no surprise or shock anymore, but then I saw it again. You saw it again? I replied, did it speak to you? He said, no. Did it make the gesture? He said, no. In fact, it just simply leaned across the shaft of light and put its hands across its face, like thus. But did you speak to it? I said, no. I went to my little box, and I tried to compose myself, and when I went out again, it was gone. 6, 7 hours later on, the break of day, the train was coming out of the tunnel, and I saw faces against the window, panic-stricken, eyes wide. I signaled, and the train stopped, but it skidded 150 feet. It was there we learned the young, beautiful lady had died in one of the compartments instantaneously, and her body was brought into my little box here and placed right exactly where you're sitting, sir. But no, I'm not done. But you see, a week ago, I've seen it. I've seen it on and off ever since then. Sporadically it appears and doesn't appear. And again, the same gesture it makes. What is it of the third incident? Well, I could not help but feel sorry for the man. I raced with ideas to compose him, and I finally said, well, I convinced him that his duties were admirable of how he performed his work, and illusion or not, he had done his work well and should not feel shamed for it. But again, he was agitated. What if I should go to the telegraph? What should I say? Danger, danger. And they would say, what? And I would say, I do not know. I would be displaced. I again encouraged him that he was doing his work proper. And then I asked him if he wished me to stay for the rest of his shift. He said no, to go on. And then I could see him the next evening. And I left. But I left with a new idea. That I should take the gentleman take him to a physician, have him examined thoroughly, and then go to the authorities and stand for his encouragement of his goodly work, and then proceed to maybe have him transferred to another post, till he would not be tormented by these dreams. I felt better about it. For the next evening, it was a beautiful evening, and I walked towards the brink where I had been before to look at the railway station. And man, down below I saw a gathering of men. I hurried down the carved stone steps gingerly, and I approached them. I said, "What goes? What happens here?" And they said, "Signalman killed." Which signalman was this? Was it my signalman? He lived at the top, and there, that must be him, his face composed. Well, what happened? I asked them. He said, "Easy. Train cut him down. And here, good man too. Knew his work well throughout all the rail lines, sir. Understanding that he was killed by the train, he would know when it was coming. Tom here, he drove the train. He could tell you." "Oh yes, sir, I drove. And we were coming off the tunnel. There he was off the side of the railway, but we pulled the whistle. He did not acknowledge us, which we thought was odd. We pulled the whistle again to get him out of the way, but he did not seem to appear to hear us. And I finally told them to cut the brake, and I cut the brake, and it still sped on, and I cut the whistle, and I kept on saying, 'Hello, below there! Look out, look out!' Could not bear it. I put my arms over my hand, and I went to gesture like this, but it was too late. It was too late. When I heard that, I lifted my hands and went like this.